The story begins one sunny day in Smallville when young Clark Kent gets his kite stuck in a tree. A car passes by and Clark tries to warn the driver that there's a big pothole in the road, but the driver's distracted by a crying baby. The car swerved and was about to crash, so Clark rushed to help when he suddenly dashed in a burst of speed, stopping the car from crashing. Shocked by his powers, he thought he could use his newfound powers to get his kite, which he did, but he was even more shocked to discover he could also fly. Having awakened to his powers, he flew into the sky and pondered who or what he was. Years have passed by and Clark is close to getting his dream job. It's his first day as an intern at the Daily Planet along with his best friend Jimmy Olsen, hoping to impress his boss on his first day. Clark walks to a local shop to bring some donuts to work. When he arrives at the shop, he inadvertently breaks the door handle when Lois Lane bumps into him. Clark was immediately smitten by her beauty. He was about to introduce himself when the shop owner shows up, embarrassing Clark. When the shop owner tells Lois he has a big appetite for their donuts and that they had to make a special bib just for him, he quickly runs out before the shop owner could tell her anything else. At the Daily Planet, Lois Lane pitches a story to her boss, Perry White, about stolen military robots hidden in Metropolis. She explains that Mount Simonson Base was the inventory warehouse for experimental military projects and was recently reported to have been robbed. She worries that thieves with dangerous war machines are loose in their city. Her boss quickly shuts her down, reminding her she's just an intern. Perry explains that she was only called in to meet the new interns, who turn out to be Jimmy and Clark, with whom she'd already acquainted earlier at the shop. Lois quickly thought that Jimmy and Clark could help her with her story, but Perry insists that she teach them the ropes about being an intern, like making coffee. After the awkward meeting, Lois tricks Clark and Jimmy into helping her with the story. Clark and the team later meet with Lois's source, Flip Johnson, one of the Daily Planet's newspaper delivery kits. Lois explains that they always know what's happening in the city because they see everything during their routes. She informs Lois that Gabby saw a bunch of trucks running a red light. Clark wonders if they were garbage trucks, to which he suspects the criminals could use to move their stolen merchandise in the open, to which the young girl confirms. Meanwhile, the thieves have holed up in a warehouse somewhere in Metropolis. Leslie Willis, their leader and later known as Livewire, just returned from a meeting and discovered that their fence wasn't at the drop point. She explains that every Metropolis buyer, fixer, and fence has disappeared. Leslie suggests they get out of town, believing they will eventually find a buyer for the stolen goods. It was already empty when Clark and the team finally arrived at the warehouse. They searched for clues and found a badge with the initials PM, which stands for Port of Metropolis, and suspects the criminals must have moved the stolen goods there. Clark receives a call from Perry demanding they return to the office immediately or they'll lose their jobs. Clark confronts Lois for tricking him and Jimmy into helping her with the story when their boss was firmly against it. Their confrontation ended with them going their separate ways. Lois and Jimmy follow the story without Clark to the city points, where they witness the criminals moving the stolen merchandise to a boat. Leslie discovers them and orders her men to capture them. Flip notices Lois and Jimmy, that she follows them and finds a giant robot is chasing them. Flip finds Clark and informs him that Lois and Jimmy are in danger. Clark tried to save Jimmy but was quickly brushed off by the robot. He then finds a disguise using his powers to destroy the robot. Leslie activated all the robots on standby to attack him. When she saw Superman destroy her robot, Clark didn't stand a chance of being outnumbered. So Lois risked running toward the containers to deactivate the robots using the control panel. She managed to deactivate all except for one. As the last robot was about to attack Lois, Clark fully awakened his powers, sending it flying with a single punch. With the fighting over, Lois wonders who he is, but Clark refuses to reveal himself and flies away. They later return to the Daily Planet to pitch their uncovered story. Still, Perry declines to print it, given they only had blurry pictures to prove it. After that, the trio's become a team and inseparable since then. After Clark discovers his powers, he seeks answers from his parents, who in turn reveal that he arrived on Earth on a spaceship that they buried on the farm. After they dug it up, young Clark stood on the metal platform which activated the spaceship. Worried that his parents would get caught up, young Clark saved them and quickly buried the spaceship. Lois asks Clark and Jimmy to come to the office early the next day because she has big news. They're quickly pulled into a decrepit room Lois claims will be their new office starting as of today. She says that although their so-called office is on the verge of collapse, she claims it would be the perfect place to work on their murder board. She explains she made it to help them track leads for their Superman investigation. Jimmy claims that Superman is an alien, which he discusses in his podcast. Lois reminds them that they need their conclusions to be backed by facts and not conspiracies. Out of the blue, Clark says he needs to skip work, claiming not to feel well. Clark returns to Smallville to figure out where he came from. He tells his mother that he used his powers to save people and that they saw him do it. He assured her that they didn't know it was him. When Lois wanted to know more about Superman, it made Clark want to know more about himself. Clark returns to the field to dig up the spaceship that his parents hid. After standing on the steel platform, a bright light shone above, and Clark disappeared. He was brought to an unknown space where Jor-El, his father, continued to speak in the Kryptonian language, which Clark doesn't understand. He was later shown a memory of when he was born minutes before the entire planet exploded and was placed in a pod by his parents to save his life. After showing a memory of his past, Clark was immediately given a Kryptonian suit, later known as Superman's outfit. Meanwhile, Lois and Jimmy are tracking the criminal mastermind from the last incident, hoping it will lead back to Superman. They return to the dock to talk to witnesses when Lois notices some tracks that lead to an underground tunnel. Lois suspects that the giant robots were not the only thing the criminals stole from Mount Simonson base. As they kept venturing deeper into the tunnel, they discovered it was rigged with hundreds of explosives just under the city. Leslie casually walks downtown somewhere in Metropolis when a pair of spies are closely following her. She notices them and lures them into an alleyway, then beats them up. She speaks into one of their comms and insists on meeting with the man in charge of the city bistro. She later meets Slade Wilson and explains that she wanted to be taken off their hit list in exchange for the stolen tech. She reveals that she's rigged the entire place with explosives. But when Lois and Jimmy come out of the sewers, she thinks it was a setup and immediately pulls out the detonator, Slade quickly stopping her, but she blows him away with her powers. Livewire's about to attack Jimmy when Superman arrives and saves him. She gets furious when she sees Superman, blaming him for losing her robots and ruining her operation. Slade uses this chance while she is distracted by Superman to attack the device on her back. Instead of resolving the issue, her power goes out of control and a big electrical field covers the area. Superman flies into it without hesitation, intent on saving her. He immediately grabs her from behind and destroys the device, quickly knocking her out. When he looked back to check on her, she already disappeared. Lois and Jimmy return to the Daily Planet to show Perry the picture of Superman, to which he's so thrilled he orders them to stop printing, as they will have a new front page story. Lois later visits Clark, to which he congratulates her for finding Superman. He claims he believed in her and describes her as extraordinary, driven, smart, and funny. When they're about to kiss, Jimmy shows up worried about their front page story, which they found out was credited as being written by someone else. Somewhere in a secret lab, Livewire was brought back by Slade and tortured for questioning about Zero Day and Superman. When a blimp catches on fire and crashes into a building, Superman quickly arrives to save the operator and the people about to be crushed by debris. While everyone is still trying to figure out what just happened, Lois comes trying to harass Superman for an interview. Superman quickly flies away to escape. Meanwhile, on Stryker's Island, inner-gang members Kyle Nimbus, later known as Mist, and Albert de Guzman, known as Roughhouse, attack the prison to break Shaban McDougal free. Kyle explains how they were given weird technology that gave him and Albert powers, which they planned to use to break her free. He then gives her a mask that amplifies sound, perfect for the Silver Banshee's powers. Back at the Daily Planet, Clark runs into Lois and gives her coffee, which Lois claims is her favorite. While she tries to explain her difficult morning, they later hear Jimmy screaming. When they check it out, they find the self-proclaimed Daily Planet Star news team with sports reporters Steve Lombard, gossip columnist Kat Grant, and straight-lace reporter Ronnie Troop. When Steve grabs Lois's murder board on Superman, Ronnie explains how Perry assigned the Superman story to them and gives them permission to use her research for the story. Ronnie claims that Perry wanted real reporters on this story compared to Lois, Clark, and Jimmy, who are interns. Although initially bummed down that Perry gave the story to another team, Lois claims they will beat the Scoop Troop and get to Superman first. Clark tries to distract Lois by suggesting they focus on the other big things happening in Metropolis. When they suddenly hear the news of Stryker's Island recent breakout, When they saw the video, Jimmy claimed that the technology Gang used looked like what Livewire had and suspected a connection might exist. Returning to the crime scene, Clark, Lois, and Jimmy arrive at Stryker's Island hoping to talk to the warden about the breakout. When Clark wondered how they would get to interview the warden, Lois quickly showed him the Scoop Troops badges. Although Clark frowns upon stealing, he's tricked into agreeing to it when Lois claims they will return to the Superman story. The warden explains how Gang used to be a crew of small-time crooks who robbed convenience stores. The warden suddenly receives a call that the Daily Planet's reporters are at the gates, to which Clark and the others quickly make themselves scarce. Before they left the warden's office, Lois slipped the warden's badge, which they used to access Siobhan's cell to check for clues. With the guards on the lookout, the gang quickly rifled through her stuff, and Jimmy found a bank layout, which they suspect will be their next target. Clark deduces that since Siobhan wanted respect, he believes they will target the Metropolitan City Bank because it's the most challenging bank to crack. After breaking out from Stryker Island, Kyle shows Siobhan the other device they got from Livewire, a freeze ray. Realizing its potential, Siobhan claims they will finally get the respect they deserve using the device. Gang shows up at the bank undetected using Mist's powers to waltz right in and turn off the cameras. They quickly use the device to freeze everyone at the bank and break into the vault. Clark and the others arrive at the bank, to which Lois reveals her master plan, have themselves captured and ambush Superman when he shows up to save them. When the situation escalates, Clark uses that chance to change into Superman and confronts Gang. Roundhouse inadvertently destroys the freeze ray as the fight gets out of hand. The core goes out of control and freezes everything around it without stopping. Superman used his heat vision to destroy the core, but not before he gets a flashback of an army of robots attacking Metropolis. Outside, Superman flies Lois to the top of the building for the interview she has been harassing him for. When Lois asks who and where his powers came from, Superman said he was still figuring that out. Later, Lois tells Clark that she thinks Superman is a liar. Following Superman's interview, Lois thinks that Superman is lying, given that he dodged every question she had. Now she's at a loss on what to do next, as it appears to be a dead end that she is forced to entertain Jimmy's idea that Superman is an alien. With that said, she asks Jimmy to bring in some tabloids to research Superman and see if there's a link. While ecstatic about this idea, Perry shows up out of nowhere and summons them to his office. Perry claims that given their desperate want to become reporters, he orders them to attend some Big Shots gala to take pictures and interview people. He informs them that Professor Anthony Ivo, CEO of Amazotech, will throw a gala for his investors. Perry explains how his company's been known for everything: phones, computers, and even security. Clark blurted out that he was also known to have used his criminal connections to displace a whole neighborhood for his headquarters, not to mention the numerous accidents that always seemed to hit his competitors. After dressing up for the gala, Clark waits for Lois at the newspaper morgue when he comes across a tabloid from 15 years ago about a flying kid he recognizes as him. He manages to rip the story out before Lois arrives and places it in his pocket. At the gala, Lois claims that she has no intention of reading Kat's questions and intends to do real investigative journalism despite good intentions. Clark and Lois struggle to get real answers to serious questions when they asked around. Given that Lois's plan isn't working, Clark confronts her and claims he will return to the original questions, when out of nowhere, the lights go out and Professor Ivo makes a grand entrance. He claims he will be doing the big unveiling of the latest technology from Amazotech later tonight. Clark interviews Professor Ivo, but when the professor makes fun of Lois, Clark lashes out at him and badgers him with provocative questions. Professor Ivo has Clark thrown out of the party. Lois checks on him and helps Clark back in. While she tried to fix his coat that got torn when he was thrown out, they suddenly witnessed a woman run out of a lab in tears. When they sneaked in, they found the same stolen tech that Gang and Livewire had when out of nowhere they overheard Professor Ivo and his assistant Alex arguing. Alex warns him that it is still a prototype and doesn't last long, but Dr. Ivo ignores his warning. Without further ado, Professor Ivo appears before everyone in an armored suit and presents his latest technology, Parasite 1.0, which grants him strength, speed, and durability comparable to even Superman himself. He explains that given the recent crime wave and sudden appearance of Superman, everyone needs one of Dr. Ivo's inventions. As part of his demonstration, he grabs one of the guests and threatens to drop him from the window. When he lets go, Superman arrives to catch him. Superman confronts Dr. Ivo, asking him to let go of the others, but Alex quickly activates the trap to imprison him. Dr. Ivo quickly rushes Superman and tests his strength against him. Superman fights back, but Ivo's suit absorbs the impact and redirects the kinetic energy at him. In addition, he explains that the panels that lay out the walls zap anyone who comes in contact with it, to which the suit absorbs the excess energy for longer sustained battery life. Lois and Jimmy notice that Alex is in the booth controlling the stage, so they quickly rush to help Superman. After turning off the trap, Superman turns the fight around and pries the suit off Professor Ivo, revealing a much older man than the one they saw earlier, proving that the Parasite 1.0 absorbed his life force. After this epic fight, Clark resurfaces, returning to the lab to get pictures, only to discover the stolen tech to be missing. After Clark walked Lois back to the office, she finishes the story for Perry. When she checks into the pocket, still wearing Clark's jacket from earlier, she finds a piece of the article that Clark ripped out of the magazine and quickly concludes that Clark is Superman. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap that bell to be notified about our latest videos. We'll see you next time.